There's a theory that says if one day we could drain all the oceans, we might uncover entire civilizations that once thrived but have since been forgotten by time. And among them, the name most often whispered is Atlantis. It wasn't just a city of imagination. According to the Greek philosopher Plato, Atlantis was once a powerful and prosperous empire, far ahead of its time, until it was destroyed in a single day and night. Ever since, humanity has been searching for the answer to one haunting question. Did Atlantis really exist? But what if Atlantis wasn't buried deep beneath the ocean, but hidden right here on land? If that theory were true, wouldn't we have to rewrite the entire history of humankind? And what if Plato wasn't speaking in metaphors at all, but was recounting a memory that history itself has tried to erase? In today's journey, we'll trace the clues, from the stories of Egyptian priests to evidence of global climate shifts, to strange geological formations in the Sahara Desert, and even to ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe. All to ask, could Atlantis have once been real? This isn't just the story of a lost city, it's the search for a truth buried in mud, in sand, and in the very memory of mankind. Plato wasn't the one who invented the story of Atlantis. He himself said he was only recording what had been passed down from his ancestor Solon, a sage of ancient Greece. According to the tale, Solon once traveled to Egypt and spoke with priests in the ancient city of Sais. There, he was told a story that had been preserved for thousands of years. They spoke of a highly advanced civilization called Atlantis, which was completely destroyed in a single day and night. The priest said the disaster had taken place more than 9,000 years before Solon's time, roughly 11,600 years before ours. At first glance, that may sound like nothing more than an ancient number, but surprisingly, it aligns almost perfectly with a real event in Earth's history. The end of the Younger Dryas period, around 11,700 years ago, the very transition from the Ice Age into the Holocene. And if you think that's just a coincidence, maybe it's time to look again, because at that exact moment, Earth went through a cataclysm powerful enough to wipe out entire civilizations. The Younger Dryas was a period of extreme climate instability. Just as the planet was beginning to warm after the Ice Age, it suddenly plunged back into cold. But after more than 1,000 years of freezing, about 11,600 years ago, global temperatures spiked dramatically. Ice sheets melted at an incredible pace, and sea levels rose 50 to 60 meters in a very short time. Scientists believe that vast coastal lands would have been swallowed completely. If Atlantis had once been near the ocean, as Plato described, then the Younger Dryas could very well have erased it from the map. Even more intriguing, ancient cultures all over the world preserve myths of a great flood, a cataclysmic deluge that drowned the world and ended an age. Perhaps they were all telling the same story, just in different languages, with different symbols. If that's true, then Atlantis wasn't just legend. It was humanity's shared memory of a lost civilization. For decades, the search for Atlantis was guided by a simple assumption. If it ever existed, it must now rest at the bottom of the sea. Explorers sent submarines into the depths, scanned the ocean floor, and speculated about ruins hidden beneath the Atlantic waves. But what if that assumption was wrong? What if Atlantis wasn't swallowed by the ocean at all, but instead buried in plain sight in one of the most unexpected places on Earth? The Sahara Desert. At first glance, the idea seems absurd. How could a city described as a mighty island kingdom surrounded by water end up in the middle of the world's largest desert? The answer may lie in a geological marvel known as the Rishat structure, also called the Eye of the Sahara. From the ground, it looks like little more than an expanse of weathered rock. But from the sky, or better yet, from space, it becomes something extraordinary, a near-perfect series of concentric rings about 40 kilometers across, carved into the heart of Mauritania. To astronauts aboard the International Space Station, it looks like a giant eye staring upward from the Earth itself. What makes the Richat so compelling is not just its dramatic appearance, but its eerie resemblance to Plato's account of Atlantis. In Critias, Plato wrote that the city was designed with concentric circles of alternating land and water, linked by channels and bridges. The Richat's geometry matches this description with astonishing precision. The diameter of the central circle, the spacing of the outer rings, and even the total scale, many independent researchers argue, line up closely with Plato's written measurements. What's more, evidence suggests that the Sahara was not always a desert. Around the Richat, scientists have found traces of ancient riverbeds, deposits of oceanic sand, and even fossils of marine creatures, all pointing to a time when water once flowed freely through this region. If the area was once lush and wet, then the possibility of a thriving civilization here cannot be dismissed so easily. Of course, mainstream geology offers a different story. According to most scientists, the Richat is the result of erosion and tectonic uplift over millions of years. But even they admit that the structure's striking circular form is unusual, and its placement in the middle of an otherwise flat desert makes it stand out like a riddle carved into the earth. If this Eye of the Sahara truly once stood near the sea, then it raises a staggering possibility. Perhaps Atlantis was never lost beneath the waves of the Atlantic, but instead lies here, buried under sand, forgotten by time, waiting for us to look in the right direction. For centuries, we've been taught to search underwater for the lost city. But maybe, just maybe, the ruins of Atlantis have been staring back at us all along, etched into the endless sands of the Sahara. When we think of the Sahara, we picture an endless ocean of sand, harsh, dry, and lifeless. But the truth is, the Sahara was not always a desert. For a long stretch of Earth's history, it was lush, green, and full of rivers, rainfall, and even vast freshwater lakes. That's no longer just a theory. Satellite imagery and geological surveys have revealed ancient river systems buried beneath the sands, layers of moist soil sediments, and erosion patterns that could only have been carved by flowing water. Most impressive is the evidence of Mega Lake Chad, a prehistoric lake that may have been 3 times the size of Lake Victoria, once the largest on the planet. If that's true, then right in the heart of today's Sahara, there once thrived a fertile ecosystem, more than capable of sustaining a civilization like Atlantis. So what happened? What transformed this green paradise into the driest desert on Earth? The answer lies not in human hands, but in the movements of the planet itself. Earth is never still. Over cycles lasting tens of thousands of years, the planet's axial tilt shifts slightly, and its orbit around the Sun alternates between more circular and more elliptical. These subtle changes dramatically affect the amount of sunlight reaching different regions, reshaping rainfall and climate patterns. Around 10,000 years ago, when Earth's tilt and orbit favored North Africa, the Sahara blossomed into a vast grassland, sometimes called the Green Sahara. But a few millennia later, as the cycle shifted, rainfall declined, vegetation died, lakes dried up, and the sands took over, creating the Sahara we know today. If Atlantis had once been there, as the Richat theory suggests, then it wasn't swallowed by the sea or destroyed by volcanoes. It may have simply been erased by Earth's natural cycles, climate shifting, land drying, and an entire civilization buried beneath advancing dunes. And perhaps even now, beneath those layers of sand, the last traces of Atlantis lie quietly waiting to be uncovered. When we think of the world's first civilizations, we usually picture Egypt, Mesopotamia, or the Indus Valley. But in the late 20th century, a discovery forced archaeologists to rethink history. Göbekli Tepe, an ancient temple site in southern Turkey. At first, people assumed it was only a few thousand years old. But radiocarbon dating shocked the world. Göbekli Tepe is between 11,000 and 12,000 years old, making it 7,000 years older than the Egyptian pyramids. The site consists of enormous stone pillars, some 6 meters tall and weighing tens of tons, arranged in massive circles. Carved onto the stones are animals, symbols, and intricate motifs. Yet there is no evidence of a nearby city or large settlement. This suggests the builders may still have been hunter-gatherers. But how could a so-called primitive community construct something so advanced? If humans were capable of moving and arranging such colossal stones 12,000 years ago, maybe we've underestimated the true potential of prehistoric civilizations. This is why Göbekli Tepe is so often compared to Atlantis. It proves that complex societies could have existed far earlier than we once believed. Right around the same time Plato said Atlantis disappeared. That means the idea of a highly developed civilization lost to disaster isn't so far-fetched after all. Another mystery. Much of Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Archaeologists still don't know why its builders intentionally covered their masterpiece. Was it to protect it from a looming catastrophe, or part of some mysterious ritual? To this day, Göbekli Tepe hasn't revealed all of its secrets. But it already tells us one thing. Human history is more complex than we thought, and perhaps somewhere out there, Atlantis too once existed, hidden away by nature and time, waiting to be rediscovered. Plato wrote that Atlantis fell in just one fateful day and night. He described how the land around Atlantis was choked with mud, making the sea routes impassable. Atlantis didn't vanish. It was buried, cut off, isolated from the rest of the world. If that's true, then Atlantis may not lie deep beneath the waves. It may still exist, simply hidden under layers of mud and human forgetfulness. This description matches what modern geology has found in the aftermath of ancient floods and tsunamis. When massive waters surged inland, whether from melting ice sheets, earthquakes, or even meteor strikes, they left behind enormous ripple marks etched into the ground, called mega ripple marks. These giant wave-like ridges can stretch hundreds of meters long and several meters high, permanent scars of ancient waters. Floods also carried mud, sand, rocks, and the remains of life, depositing them in thick sedimentary layers. Even today, we see these deposits across areas that now look barren, especially in North Africa. Nature recorded its story in these layers of earth. If a great island civilization had once existed, as Plato described, then such cataclysms could have destroyed its ports, buried its buildings, and left behind a wasteland of mud. Perhaps Plato wasn't speaking in metaphor after all. Perhaps he was passing on a memory of a brilliant civilization drowned not by the depths of the sea, but by the heavy sediments of time. Maybe the greatest lesson of Atlantis is not about finding the city, but about finding ourselves in the mirror of the past. More than 2,000 years after Plato's account, we, today's modern civilization with satellites, AI, and spacecraft, still face dangers that are strikingly similar. We, too, are confronting climate change, resource depletion, and ambitions with no limit. The story of Atlantis, whether legend or historical memory, remains a powerful warning. The collapse does not always come from the outside. It begins from within. From arrogance, from believing we have risen above all natural limits. Today, Atlantis has yet to be discovered. Perhaps it never existed, or perhaps we have been looking in the wrong place. But what is certain is this: its story still endures, as a quiet yet serious reminder that whatever is built by human brilliance and ambition can just as easily be swept away if we forget the lessons of the past. And maybe, in the end, the real importance is not whether we find Atlantis, but whether we make sure that no new Atlantis will be buried again.